Thanks for tuning into this video. This is a winter weather outlook update, and we'll give you the status of El Nino and the outlook for the rest of 2016. Keep in mind what El Nino is warm ocean temperatures in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Those sea surface temperatures are what controls and can change our jet stream, which brings our storms to our region here in Southern California. That jet stream is at flight level, 40,000 feet, but is critical for bringing storms into our region, such as in El Nino years. How are we doing before we saw the rain of early January? Well, across most of the West, there was a wide range in precipitation above normal or below. Across our region, you can see most areas were below normal, in some cases very much below normal since October 1st. Now, when you look at temperature, you can see that conditions were cooler in the west, but still we wound up being above normal from October all the way through early January. This is a look at the weather pattern that we had across the west, November and December 2015. You can see the red line is the main storm track, and that storm track was going into the northern Pacific and then carving across Nevada and slowing down, where they saw all that significant precipitation you saw in the earlier image, and then moving across to the Midwest and the plains where there was record flooding in the Mississippi River Valley. So this is not quite the El Nino pattern we expect to see. However, November and December in most El Nino years aren't necessarily classic to El Nino responses from the ocean to the atmosphere. Typically it takes until January through March. So in early January, we saw significant rainfall as the first series of Pacific storms really impacted central and southern California. This map here shows rainfall that was reported over the course of 3 days. Some of the rainfall was pretty significant, like you see in San Diego County, where areas received over 5 inches of rain. This equated to about a 1 in 10-year storm. However, we did see localized 1-hour rainfall in San Diego County that was closer to 1 in 50-year type return interval when it comes to storms. It's important to think of storms in terms of 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 as not necessarily occurrence in years, but it's actually a percentage of probability for any given year. So you can have a 1 in 10-year storm multiple times in one particular year. And that is common in El Nino years. What was the weather pattern that drove those storms? Well, it was an elongated, extended Pacific jet stream, and that is classic to El Nino conditions. That jet stream drives the storms into our region, so we don't just get one big storm, but we get multiple storms moving through, as shown here. So we finally saw the impact of El Nino in early January as the jet stream dropped further enough south to bring that significant weather into our region. During the storm survey that we did in Vista, you can see some of the damage we observed. All the trees were going towards the north, but nonetheless, the winds were estimated to be over 60 miles per hour. Think of it as a thunderstorm dropping a large water balloon or a sudden burst of wind, heavy air that lands on the ground and can be very dangerous and destructive. We also saw significant tree damage from winds that were estimated up to 70 miles per hour, which uprooted large pine trees and also snapped trees at mid-trunk. Those trees landed on a few cars and damaged fences. Luckily, no one was injured. Here's a classic look at some flash flooding that occurred in San Diego County. This was from the intense rainfall we saw of 1 to 2 inches of rain in just a 2 to 3 hour period, and it happened to be during commute as well. This is the type of flash flooding that is very dangerous and leads to most of the high water rescues or even fatalities. Vehicles, as you see here, try to drive through it thinking that it's not that deep or it's not moving. The engines either stall out or they lose track of their vehicle as the car can be lifted from just 12 to 18 inches of water. We also had a significant landslide, as you see here, in Silverado Canyon that closed the road. Then we have other types of flooding which are more longer in duration and slower in rising. The San Diego River here is shown at about 10 feet, and it caused numerous closures of the roadways down in Mission Valley. The river actually peaked at 11 feet at its highest point. So now, adding all the rainfall we had in early January, how are we doing so far across the West? Well, just this year alone, you can see that there's still a lot of areas in California that are below normal in the orange shaded areas. We have made big progress in San Diego County, where most of the area is about normal. And this is consideration of precipitation just since October 1st, or the new water year. Keep in mind, though, most of California is missing about 25 inches of precipitation over the past 4 years. So we have a long ways to go, and we want to see all of California normal or above to make any significant improvement on the ongoing drought. Local reservoirs, for example, in San Diego County only saw a slight rise in storage levels after this period of rain. How is El Nino doing now? This is a latest image taken from satellite. It compares to 30-year normal. You can see that the swath we call El Nino along the equatorial Pacific Ocean is still very large and intense. In fact, you can see most of the Pacific Ocean is running normal to above normal, and the warm waters that we've seen in the Baja region over the past 2 years continue to persist in those regions. Now, some of the warm water that we see in the California Bight as storms move through, like we saw in early January, that warm water actually acts to enhance or magnify the storms, make the rainfall just a little bit heavier or stronger, and bring more lightning. And that is one of the impacts we see from warm water that is actually outside of the El Nino area. Now, typically what we expect with El Nino is the jet stream will drop south in January, and we see wet conditions develop, at least in past strong El Ninos. This is not a forecast, but this is actually what has occurred in past El Ninos. Now, what is very important here is what typically happens in February and March, and sometimes lingering into April, is that the shift of the jet stream goes far enough south that now that it's not the Pacific Northwest, but it's all of California, and especially Southern California, as shown here in February, March, in past strong El Ninos. The current El Nino has become so strong and its record-breaking strength that the only other comparable strength is 97-98 and perhaps 82-83. Our current El Nino looks like this when you put it on a map. The region of El Nino along the equator is still running about 3 Celsius. Most of the location is above 2 Celsius or above 4 Fahrenheit. This is a massive area of warm water that can affect our jet stream during the course of the winter. It's an area of warm water that's larger than the United States. The outlook that we expect for the rest of the winter is shown here. This outlook only gets updated once a month, but the projection was that the best chance of being wetter or above normal was across the southern part of California, going up into central California as well. Now, one thing that El Nino also does is it affects temperatures, and we've seen that since December, where northern locations of the United States have been above normal in temperature. Our region, we finally gotten back to normal, but we're still running a little bit above normal as shown earlier. And those are the expectations to continue through the rest of this winter. Here's a look at what we expect for the coverage of above normal rainfall. You can see most of Central California is in that region, and Southern California is where the most confidence is. And this is largely based on historical El Nino events such as 82, 83, 97, and 98. One thing also with El Nino is the storms that we get significantly affect the deserts, and it's not just the coast and the mountains. And that was the case in early January, where about 2 inches of rain fell in Palm Springs. Now here's a sneak peek at some of the computer model data that we look at, and the outlook for the rest of the month is indicating that the early part of February and the last part of January is when we could see our next round of significant rainfall. Most of this rainfall looks like it's going to be heaviest across parts of northern or central California. But nonetheless, it does show up as moving into Southern California. Now, the National Weather Service also generates experimental 3 to 4 week forecasts, and using the information I showed in the prior screen can help generate those forecasts. Here's the latest forecast issued on January 15th, and this is for very late January into early February, and you can see most of the West Coast and really all of California has about an equal chance, but significant chance, of being above normal. As you can see there, the 60% and 55% line, or the green shaded areas. And of course, that extends across Texas and Florida too, and those areas are also very well known for having above normal rainfall. So this projection here is for January 30th through February 12th. Thanks for tuning into this latest update on El Nino, and a lot of links here for you to view. Mobileweather.gov for your smartphone. Advanced users, you might want to check out previewweather.gov. And if you're looking for great graphics of weather forecasts, digitalweather.gov. Updates from the Climate Prediction Center are done on a weekly basis, and forecasts that go out as far as 1 to 2 months are done on a monthly basis. Thanks for tuning in.